My name's Owen. I'm a metalworker from Peterborough, Canada. I came here to the fish factory in January and February of 2018 to work on a variety of different sculptural projects. My practice includes taking found metal objects, different like rusty salvaged materials, and cutting intricate patterns by hand using a plasma torch. Freehand cutting allows me to work on materials that wouldn't be programmable into like a CNC cutter or other automated devices. This allows me to work with objects that have a history and come from somewhere, as opposed to just sheet steel. A lot of the different patterns that I use come from different historical references, such as the arts and crafts movement and William Morris. While I was here in Iceland, I was interested in the different folk traditions and their weaving and their textile patterns. My process begins with me finding the actual material. It took a while to accumulate enough metal objects here in Iceland to begin working. So I had to check a lot of the different scrap yards and recycling depots, as well as along the harbor front for different rusty, unused items. And then I draw everything out in soapstone, and then the fun can begin with cutting. It often takes many hours, and it's sitting in a small, dark room wearing a lot of different safety gear, and I just spend hours cutting these holes, staring at just the spark through my welding goggles. Like, I always knew I was going to go to art school afterwards. It was just I wanted to get a practical skill, something that I could bring with me, so that I wasn't coming in as kind of green as some people do right out of high school. I kind of was aware that they wouldn't really have much of a focus on building these skills at art school. So it was something I had to kind of seek out myself. Yeah, I started out working at a greenhouse, constructing different sculptures for gardens and stuff like that, and realized I really enjoyed working reductively as opposed to like building something up like most sculptors would who are welders. Usually they build up things, welding it all together, and then they can't move it because it weighs like 400 pounds. Whereas with this, everything gets lighter the more work that I put into it. It's the reductive process leaves me with like something that is easily transportable, but also greater than if I had added things to it. Like, that's just kind of how my brain sees things, is through subtraction. Yeah, for the metalwork, like, I really realized how much it is a kind of part of me, or like part of my overall practice, even for things unrelated to the actual metalworking. I found myself considering them while I was cutting, and kind of the role that plays in my overall creative process, even things completely unrelated to metal and salvaged materials and kind of what I had initially set out to do. Yeah. Cutting for me is like a time of reflection and kind of like thinking things over, which I kind of can only do when I've got the blinders of a welding mask on, is when I'm just watching that spark, because everything else is just too overstimulating. The sensory deprivation of the welding mask is like what allows me to have kind of a tunnel vision and get hyper-focused on something. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so meditative. It's also really nice to like build up a skill and go from like barely able to like cut anything, let alone all these intricate patterns, to being able to cut like large amounts of things and kind of laying it all out and learning the design aspects of that, and seeing the way like different rust forms around objects and kind of following the contours of the rust and the way that that's kind of naturally occurring. And that's how I kind of consider what to cut into things and where to cut. Sometimes I'll leave something solid so that you get that contrast from the design, but then I'll elements in the rust patterns to keep things solid, or interesting parts of the patina, and that really kind of leads to an interesting composition.